I apologize for the delay. At this time, I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Meridian Planning and Zoning Commission on January 17, 2019. Let's begin with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Casanelli is present, just stepped away. Commissioner McCarville?
Here.
Commissioner Yearsley?
Here.
Commissioner Perot?
Here.
And absent is Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We will be continuing a couple of items this evening, and that is public hearing for Pine Fourplex H20180135 and the public hearing for Stapleton Subdivision H20180129. So if anyone is here for those applications, we won't be taking testimony on those this evening. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And we have 3 items on the consent agenda. Approval of minutes for January 3rd, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Findings of fact, conclusions of law for Villa Sport CUP H20180121. And the findings of fact, conclusions of law for the Pleasant View Elementary School H20180103. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now I'll explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and then start with the staff report. The staff will report their findings regarding how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and uniform development code with the staff's recommendations. After the staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case for the approval of their application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to make their presentation. After they have finished, we will open to public testimony. There is a sign-up sheet in the back as you entered. Actually, I think there's an iPad back there now. If you wish to testify, please put your name on that list. Any person testifying will come forward and be allowed 3 minutes. If they are speaking for a larger group, which it doesn't look like we have this evening, there is a show of hands to represent the group, they will be given 10 minutes. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to have an opportunity to come back and respond if they desire. After that, we will close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully will be able to make a recommendation to City Council. So we will go ahead and open the meetings that are going to be continued for the purpose of continuing them and setting a date. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for Pine Fourplex H20180135. The applicant is requesting a continuance to February 7th, 2019. Can I get a motion to continue?
Madam Chair, I move we continue public hearing H-2018-0135 to the date of February 7th, 2019.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue the hearing to February 7th, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will just go ahead and open item D on the agenda to continue as well. The public hearing for Stapleton Subdivision H20180129. Can I get a motion to continue? The applicant has not requested a future hearing date. Is there anyone present here for that application?
Madam Chair, when I spoke with Sonia, and perhaps planning staff can correct me, but they had asked for February 7th, but she was recommending a date beyond that. Bill or Stephanie have an update on that?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that's my impression too. We, I think, wrote at February 7th is what I'd heard, so.
Okay. Can I get a motion to continue?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Carville?
I'm just looking at the draft for the agenda for the 7th, and we just already placed another one on there that'll be 5.
Madam Chair,
And if staff is wanting a later one.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't have an exact date for you. I can let you know with that particular subdivision, we're working out some issues with the developer and some of the things that we'd like to be changed. And again, we have a meeting with them tomorrow, but I don't think we can get those changes within the necessary time frame to keep that, update the staff report and get that information to you before the February 7th. That's why staff had pushed that out. So I think for all those involved, I think that second hearing in February would probably suit us best, which I think is the 21st or.
First.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So I think staff's position is push it out at least to that hearing date if commission's amenable to that.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner McCarville?
I move that we continue item H-2018-0129 Stapleton subdivision to February 21st.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue H2018-0129 to February 21st. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we will open the public hearing for Oakmore subdivision 2018-0118 and begin the staff report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The first project before you, actually both projects before you tonight are kind of related. They're both in the Oaks North subdivision, so some of the analysis and some of the stuff we'll be talking about is probably going to make sense for both subdivisions. Oakmore is, this application's for a rezone and a preliminary plat. The site is located near the intersection of West Gondola Drive and North Black Cat Road. It's approximately 7 acres and it's zoned R4. To the north, there's future single-family residential subdivision, which is Westbridge, zoned R4. To the south is a single-family residential subdivision, zoned R8. To the east is North Black Cat Road and single-family subdivisions, zoned R8. And to the west is future phases of the Oaks, zoned R4. In 2008, the property was annexed and zoned as part of the Oak Creek subdivision, which is subject to the Oak Creek DA. In 2013, it was rezoned to R15 and platted as part of the Oaks North when the property was expanded and split into the Oaks North and South, which was associated with a new DA. The current DA includes concept plan with multifamily depicted on this subject property. Comprehensive plan shows medium density residential. The applicant is requesting a rezone from R15 to R4 in a preliminary plat consisting of 18. Let me back up really quick. So this is actually the concept plan for the whole Oaks North subdivision, which shows Oakmore up here to the northeast. So the applicant is requesting a rezone from R15 to R4 in a preliminary plat consisting of 18 single-family residential lots and 6 common lots. Lots range in size from approximately 9,500 square feet to 15,000 square feet for an average lot size of 11,495. The gross proposed density is 2.44 units per acre. The proposed density is below the desired density for medium density residential, but we feel that it's consistent when included with the entire Oaks development. The applicant has submitted a separate modification to the development agreement to be consistent with the proposed development for 18 single-family residences on the subject property. The DA modification will be heard before City Council on February 19th. Approval of this project is contingent on that approval, since the current site plan depicts multifamily rather than the single-family residences that are being proposed. A stub street is proposed to the north into the proposed Westbridge subdivision and to the south to Jump Creek. Internal access will be through future phases of the Oaks. No direct access is proposed to North Black Cat Road. One common driveway is proposed to provide access to 2 lots at the northwest part of the property. That access does exceed the UDC maximum length of 150, but the applicant's working with staff on that and we'll get it redesigned prior to the council hearing to comply. 5-foot detached sidewalks are proposed throughout the development. Staff is recommending that the applicant add a micropath to the southwest part of the site, right about here, it's denoted too, to provide pedestrian access to the Jump Creek subdivision to the south. Staff is also recommending that the city's 10-foot multi-use pathway be continued along North Black Cat Road. The West Tap sublateral crosses lots 2 and 3, Block 1, and Lot 1, Block 3 in the proposed plat. The applicant shall relocate that lateral or tile it. The applicant needs to specify how wide the easement will be on those buildable lots. If the easement is greater than 10 feet, it needs to have a 20-foot common lot unless it's waived by council. Renderings of a variety of the single-family residences have been submitted. They'll be pretty consistent with what's in the area. Staff is concerned that the number of amenities provided with the overall development for with this subdivision and Oakwind, which will be heard next, may not be adequate since the conceptually approved multifamily would have required more open space and amenities. This parcel was originally proposed to develop with 60 multifamily units, which would have been required to provide at least 10% open space and at least 3 qualified site amenities. With the addition of the 2 projects currently proposed, Oakmore and Oakwind, where they will be adding, if approved, 100 additional single-family residential homes, which means roughly 750 single-family homes will be using the same group of amenities originally approved. Staff feels that the recommended micropath and continuation of the 10-foot multi-use pathway would provide usable open space for residents. There's been no written testimony on this project. And with that, staff recommends approval with the conditions that were contained in the staff report and asks that commission determine whether the number of amenities provided with this development and I guess both are adequate for the subdivision. With that, staff will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? None? Okay. Will the applicant please come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Becky McKay, Engineering Solutions, business address 1029 North Rosario in Meridian. I'm representing Toll Brothers on this particular application. Could you put up the Oakmore? Oh, yeah, this is Oakwind. Sorry, you're Oakmore. That's okay, sorry. Your, whatever you had, just the colored site plan that you had in your PowerPoint, sorry. Yeah, that's good, right there, that's good. When I originally designed the project for Oaks North and brought it through for entitlements, my client, Coleman Homes at the time, acquired this L-shaped parcel that you see that's before you as Oakmore subdivision. The reason that they acquired it, even though it was kind of an unusual shape, was that we would therefore have secondary access out to Black Cat, which was necessary to meet the fire department requirements. Since then, the Jump Creek subdivision has been approved. The West Bridge subdivision has been approved. And so my clients kind of took a look at this and decided, we initially showed no design for any multifamily. We just said 60 multifamily dwellings on R15. So what's before you this evening is we're asking to downzone it from R15 to R4 and from the 60 multifamily units to 18. And so what we did is we have opportunity now to connect to West Bridge subdivision to the north, which has been approved, and then to the south is Jump Creek, and it's my understanding that they are constructing their collector roadway. The staff has asked us to include a micropath here, and we already showed a micropath coming to the west, or east, I'm sorry, out to Black Cat Road. And then staff has asked us, based on the park's pathway plan, to install a 10-foot multi-use pathway along our Black Cat frontage, which we are in agreement with both of those issues. I did have a conversation with the fire department. They indicated this common driveway here is 187 feet long and the maximum allowable length is 150. So I will need to reconfigure these 2 lots to bring this into compliance with the 150, or either just consolidate the 4 lots and make it 3 lots. So we'll go ahead and do that prior to going to the city council. So really what's before you is a reduction of 42 dwelling units. This will be part of the 250-some acres of Oaks North. In that project, I sent staff an extensive list of our open space. We had 27 acres of open space, which we've increased that open space as we're designing phase 1, 2, and 3 at this time. We have 5.71 acre central amenity. So we're building with the first phase, this 5.71 acre central amenity. There'll be pool facility, tot lot, benches, picnic areas, pathways. There's going to be a pathway that runs along here. We're piping the crease and lateral. There'll be a 10-foot multi-use pathway that goes all along the collector roadway and up this collector and then links to Jump Creek. So what's before you as Oakmore is just this little L-shaped parcel here. So it will be part of this larger development that you see here. We've reviewed staff's conditions. We're in full agreement. Do you have any questions?
Becky, can you, so access to the property will come through Oaks North, so I'm assuming it will not be built until the roads are, I don't know what, I don't have a phasing plan in front of me for Oaks North.
Madam
so.
Chair, you're correct.
Okay.
This will be one of our latter phases. So phase 1 is right here with the amenity. Phase 2, phase 3 is, I think, right here. So it would be in our latter phases. And we are not taking any direct access to Black Cat.
Okay.
It will all be internal, and then we will link West Bridge and then into Jump Creek, because this collector goes on out to Black Cat and aligns with Bridge Tower West or Volterra that I designed east of us.
Okay. Can you show us on here what the pedestrian access would be from this property over to the closest open space or common area in Oaks North?
Yeah, so we'll have a pedestrian pathway located here that will allow people to come in and drop into the Jump Creek project. There's a proposed elementary school that will be up in the Bainbridge project, so we put a micropath coming out here to Black Cat and the multi-use pathway. And then as far as dropping into our central open space, they'll come down and catch this multi-use pathway. It's a 10-footer that will run all the way down, and it's all detached to the central amenity here. We have another amenity up here, and then we created a pocket park here. There'll be another amenity here, 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 and here. And then we have other amenities to the west. So we were required to have basically a pool facility, multiple play equipment or tot lots, our integrated pathway system, our 10-foot multi-use pathway. We have bocce ball courts, covered picnic shelters, barbecue areas. We're doing a sport court, benches, sitting areas. And like I said, in those smaller pocket parks, we're doing playground tot lots. So there'll be activities throughout the whole project due to its size. And what I indicated to the staff, as we submit our first phase, we will create a qualified open space map with a list of amenities. And we've done this with the staff on our larger projects so that we can track them phase by phase, making sure that as we progress through, that we are meeting our qualified open space that's delineated in our development agreement and the number of amenities as approved initially by the Plan and Zoning Commission and the Council.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Becky, are there, there's just the one pool here. Are there other pools in the adjacent subdivision?
In Oaks South, we have another, so there's Oaks North that you're looking at here. South of McMillan is the Oaks South development. It has its own pool facility. This is going to be one of their larger pool facilities due to the number of lots in here.
And how large is that pool?
They're working on the design right now. I have not seen the finished product, but it's going to be far larger than Oaks South.
And parking at the pool, how much
Yes.
parking is available at
At the parking, I think the parking we had, it looks like probably about 20 spaces in there by just eyeballing it. But that's one of the things that we've been working with staff on, is providing additional parking for these pool facilities, because parents like to drive their toddlers, handicapped children, elderly people like to drive over to the facilities. And so we do receive comments on projects. None of them have been mine, that the parking was inadequate where they have just, say, 6 or 8 spaces. So, yes, we are cognizant that has been an issue with other projects.
And one final question on that. Is there a clubhouse there as part of the pool?
Their amenity designer for Toll Brothers is back east, and they're working on that design right now. The one on Oak South, it is just changing rooms, pool facility, picnic shelters, barbecue areas, playgrounds, walkways, benches. Since this is a lot larger area, they're going to boost that amenity package up. So I don't know if they're going to do like a great room or gathering place. I can obviously, if that's one of the comments that the commission has, I can take that back to their designer, who, like I said, is working on that right as we speak.
Thank you.
What would you say is the distance from Oakmore, walking distance from Oakmore to that central common area? It's a quarter mile? It's pretty significant distance. Would most folks be driving?
I would say that is probably a quarter mile, yes.
And there isn't, other than taking the sidewalks, there's not a quicker way to get to the other parks in that northeast corner there, correct?
Well, I don't have the Jump Creek design in front of me. I don't know if the staff has it. They're asking me to put a micropath right here, linking to open space in Jump Creek, so they may be able to drop down into Jump Creek and take a shortcut right to here, versus having to go all the way around the horn here. Mm-hmm. They may be able to just come down directly here. Okay. I don't know if Bill has that or not.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the city just approved the final plat, the third phase for Jump Creek. So that's the purpose for the condition, is to tie into their micropath segment. It does dump into an on-street sidewalk and then ties into the collector street. So it's a shorter jog to come through the micropath and then get onto the multi-use pathway between both the subdivisions and get down to that park. So yes, it's quite a bit of distance away, but there is a shorter route to get to it than what you see in the concept plan.
And Madam Chair, the lots in here are ranging from 9,000 to 15,000 square feet. So we're only at 2.44 dwelling units per acre, so it's real low density out there on that periphery.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Yeah. Commissioner Yearsley.
And this might be more directed to staff. Do we have kind of, it's kind of hard to get a picture of just this little piece. Do we have one that's kind of showing what's up north and what's being proposed down below, kind of all together?
Yes, I will pull.
So we can maybe see it in more of a better context.
Madam Madam Chair, members of the commission, I can't get our mapping program to work at the moment, so I was going to try to show you the plan subparcels that we have, but I can't get it to show up. So this is the Google image. Maybe Bill could, I don't know if you remember where all the connections are, but maybe you could.
Commission, I mean, Madam Chair of Commission, are you wanting Jump Creek in relation, or even all of these subdivisions approved around? Do you want it for Oaks North and Oaks South and see how those tie together, or even how Jump Creek ties into the development?
I was just thinking the north and south, just because, you know, it's a very thin, long strip, and it'd kind of be nice to have a context of how these three fit together.
We have that in the staff report. If maybe Stephanie can pull that up and blow up in that and show you how all those subdivisions interconnect.
One more thing.
Switch the screens for you.
It doesn't show it below it.
Doesn't show that. It doesn't show that area. It's too bad.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think the best that we've got right now is what's shown here in the plan development map, and you can't really see the connections all that well, but I'll try to troubleshoot and see if I can get the GIS map to show up if there's anything else that we want to discuss while I do that.
Absolutely. Let's move forward and take public testimony. Is there anyone signed up?
Madam Chair, there was no one signed in.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this application? Okay. Well, then that being said, are the commissioners okay with reviewing these maps during our deliberation, or would you like to wait until, do we want to close the public hearing, and or do you want to wait?
You know, it's kind of a tough one for me because, you know, anytime you're going to an R15 to an R4, I'm always in favor of that. So my only concern, I guess, for me is, and maybe it's not that big a deal, but it just kind of, you know, it's so, you know, it just kind of be nice to have just a feel of how it fits in with the rest of the subdivisions. But, you know, if everyone would like to move forward, I'd be okay with that.
Madam Chair. Commissioner McCarville?
I'm looking on the map on the left, and that's all R4 to the north of it, right, Becky? Okay. And then did I see on that other map there was a little tiny strip of R15 left? So has that been approved already?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, that 2 acres of R15 was a fourplex conceptual plan that was approved with Jump Creek, and they'll have to come back before this body with a CUP application in order for you to look at the elevations and the site layout. So it's conceptually entitled, but it hasn't been approved for construction.
Right.
They've just subdivided it at this point,
Okay.
or at least in the process of subdividing it.
And then what was south of that little strip of R15 that was left? Was that R4 or R8 below
Madam
that?
Chair, yeah, that is R8.
Okay.
Madam Chair, one more
Commissioner Holland?
question of clarification. Just to make sure, the application is for rezoning it from R15 to R4. There were a couple of notes in the staff report that mentioned R8. I think it might have just been a typo, but I just noticed that right below the maps on here, so just wanted to make sure I noted that for you.
Thank you. I'll make sure to make that correction in the staff report.
Does the applicant have anything else to share prior to closing? Okay. I'll take a motion to close the public hearing for item number H20180118.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. So this is a unique situation in that there's already been a DA approved for Oaks North, and so different in a situation where if we're not looking at this isolated piece of property. And in our next hearing, we'll be taking into account a section on the west side of the same property. And so I think we want to review them as a whole and consider them as a whole. And so as far as reviewing open space, taking all of that into account for 750 units is where some of the topic of our conversation should lead.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner McCarville?
I think at this point, for this little strip, I would be in favor of the R4 and letting this one in without a whole lot of modification for the open space. I think it's definitely going to come into play more on the next one and taking a harder look at that overall. But I think with this little strip and not taking the access to Black Cat the way they had originally envisioned, I think this individual project is, I would be in support of this one.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Holland?
I tend to agree. I don't mind the down change in density on this project. It's kind of a strange-shaped parcel to do much with, and I think my only concern with it at this point is the R15 that would be south of it and how that's going to integrate in, because that could be a challenge next to an R4 neighborhood. I would imagine that once residents get established, they might have some concerns with a multifamily building in their backyard. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my only concern at this point. The only other note I had was that the fire department said there was some challenges with that 150 feet drive, but Becky addressed that in her report, so no concerns there.
Bill, you said that Phase 3 of Jump Creek has been platted, and are they going to be presenting that soon? Is there an anticipation that they might start construction prior to this property, since this is in such a later phase?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, that project has already been before City Council.
Oh, okay.
That final plat's been approved.
Oh, okay.
So yes, they're getting their construction drawings reviewed and approved now, so they can start in the spring. So yes, it will be ahead of this phase for sure.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarville?
So it should not come to anybody's surprise then when they go to build those lots that's
was
there. Yeah, and
that was what I was getting at.
Fourplex kind of blends in better than obviously a big apartment building. I think given the circumstances and being separate projects, I would be in support of it.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli?
overall, I'm typically almost always in favor of step down. And it does look like there's staff comments and discussing the amenities and whatnot in the next project. So looks like we will be talking about that. all in all, I'm in favor of it. I too, I think it's going to be funny with some fourplexes back there. It's had this been remained at R8, it would have been, I think that would have blended a little bit better. So it's going to be a strange blend, but the R15, that's been approved, and hard to do a whole lot else with this strip than to do it the way it's done. So all in all, I'm in favor.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
So just taking on my experience that I've seen, I'm on the HOA of our current subdivision, and the last phase got the least amount of amenities. And I'll tell you, I still, to this day, will hear that they're feeling left out because they didn't get the amenities like everybody else did. And so I pay some conscious effort to that. And I apologize for maybe not being up to speed on a lot of this. But, you know, it's a long ways from this subdivision to where their amenities are, and not knowing what's being proposed north, because it sounds like that one's going to be part of all this overall development. I would be a little leery to, I like it, don't get me wrong, but I would like to see a little bit more amenities out this way. And if they have better amenities with the next phase up above it, you know, that would be beneficial. But at this point, just based on this alone, I think we're a little short on amenities personally.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Castelli.
Commissioner Yearsley, I agree with you on that. The only thing I see sometimes on R4 and the size of the lots, a lot of times residents they've got all their own amenities going on there. Sometimes they've got room to put in a pool. They can,
right,
have extra large play structures and that sort of thing. I think, when you go through some different subdivisions, neighborhoods around that are R4 and have, almost acre-sized lots, they've got, they have quite a bit. That would, all in all, I would agree with you, though.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your comments.
I would have liked to have seen, if, I agree that I feel like there's quite a distance to common areas, and I would have liked to have seen more options for walking paths, maybe between some of the home sites to get to some of those areas a little more quickly. Can you bring that full concept plan back up? Commissioner Yearsley, just a question for you then. Would you, in your thinking along those lines, are you suggesting that maybe there's a smaller central area and they put some larger common areas in different sections since it's such a large development?
I think for the most part, maybe adding a little bit more ground to that little pocket park and making it a little bit bigger, maybe adding an amenity there would be satisfying, because it gives them something close by that they can go to and congregate together as kids want to go play instead of playing in the backyard or something like that, is what would be adequate.
Within this piece itself?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Any motions to be made?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Bill was able to locate a concept plan that indicates the land below or to the south. So he's putting it in the folder, and I can pull it up if you'd like to take a look.
Yes, please. We had the hearing for the property to the north not long ago, and it's also this sort of a strip piece, and if I remember correctly, they were larger lots, Westminster subdivision, and it wasn't unlike how this is designed. But I would imagine the two are not sharing any kind of, open space, so.
So, Madam Chair, members of the commission, so you can see the Oakmore subdivision sandwiched in between, which is Westbridge to the north, and then Phase 3 of Jump Creek is right along the south boundary, and you see how the roads connect into that development. And then if you can kind of show where the two common lots are, Stephanie, there where the pathway connections would come in between lots 7 and 8 in the southwest corner. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, southwest corner of that's where that PED connection would come in, but this shows you how this would interact with the adjacent developments. And then that R15 piece that you had brought up earlier shows in the corner of Jump Creek number 3, there's 7 lots there that will have 4-plex units there. In the north, it's the northeast corner of Jump Creek. Yeah, right there. That's that remaining R15 that was approved with that development. So I didn't mean to hijack your motion, but I thought you wanted to look at something showing you how.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner McCarville?
Yeah, so we've got common lots all along the north side of that road, just, I mean, open space. What was planned in there? Just open grass and landscape? Yeah. We've got that entire open area, and then is there room for any sort of amenity in that space up there?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, is that a question to staff, or are you guys just talking out loud? I can see things. I can see things a couple different ways. So I think we should elaborate a little bit on the open space and amenities for you, so just to kind of give you a broader understanding. Because I worked on this project in 2013, so I'm very familiar with. It's a large project. It's a huge community. We're talking almost 400 acres when this thing is built out and done. I think one of the aspects that the city really liked at the time that it came through, that it was a mixed-use development. It had multifamily. It had a mix of different residential types. It had office uses. It had a future park. And a lot of that has dissolved, and that's why we need to go through that DA modification, which I won't go into at this point. But now we're down to where we're having a larger project, and now we're starting to pick apart pieces of that larger project, and now we're trying to integrate that smaller portion into a larger portion that's already been approved. And so that's why we posed that question to you this evening, is because with a standalone multifamily project, you get your own open space, your own amenities that go along with that project, and that's driven by that density. In this particular case, these are larger lots, and there are 4, so that's a good thing. I think the commission agrees. You're going to have a bigger backyard, you're going to have more open space, private usable space for the homeowners. But so in the applicant's request for that DA modification, they're asking to modify the concept plan to change that from multifamily to, we have a history here with the city. I don't want you to think, we have a precedent that when there's common ownership for a development, we do allow the developer to amend the development agreement and roll in additional properties under that development agreement to share open space and amenities with different phases or previous phases. Not an issue with that, but I think the commission's raising some concerns that we saw when we analyzed the project, is the fact that a multifamily project functions differently than a single-family project, just for the fact that you are going to get more open space and more amenities with that. So we don't want to lose the intent of the original plan. We want those amenities to happen and that open space to happen, and we're talking 750 homes. And going back to the commission standpoint, when we look at a Tuscany or we look at a Paramount, we look at 4 pools, we look at a city park donated, we look at a lot of things that come into play that aren't part of this particular project, and they were at one time. Again, I'm not trying to sway the commission one way or another. I'm just laying out kind of traditionally what we've seen as developments, larger developments like this come in. This plat, although they're not proposing 10% open space and they are asking to include it as part of the overall development, you have, the code allows you the ability to require 10% of this plat, standalone plat. It's over 5 acre minimum. If you feel there should be an amenity and 10% open space with this plat, that's something within your purview. If it's something that you want added as part of the DA that we can't get because code doesn't allow you, then we would ask that you provide a recommendation to us so that we, as we prepare the staff report for the DA modification, we can include that in our recommendation to City Council as they act on the DA modification. So that's something that you need to consider. If you want this to be a straight R4 development, still be part of the Oaks, but still have the 10% as required by code and the one amenity, that's within your purview to require. If you feel like the applicant's made the justification that it could still function with the way it's designed and still has adequate open space and amenities with the previous version of the plan, that's within your purview too, and we'll take that up with City Council as we move forward with that DA modification. But if I'm looking at this, and if you're struggling with it, or if you want to compromise, if you think they should do 5%, certainly the applicant has the ability, to me, if I'm looking at this, trying to find logical open space, and I'm going to sneak over to Stephanie's mic to kind of, so I can show you where I think would be the best place for the open space. Yeah, I would almost link it here to this other common lot. Then you can get a pocket park or an amenity. It ties in with an adjacent subdivision, and you kind of build that place of community, and you're not having to go quarter mile or go through a bunch of different streets and tie into pocket parks that are 800 or 1,000, 1,500 feet away. But that's just my take on it. But I at least wanted to give you a context, and that way we don't have to go into all of that with the next project either. So any questions on what I provided to you?
Okay. Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
And I don't have the vision on this. I'm sure Becky might, but I mean, if they're already having to reconfigure the land, that little spot to the north of the road with the common driveway, and I know she mentioned possibly that would be 3 lots anyway. I don't know if there's more space to be had there to create an amenity there. Yeah.
Madam Chair, and I kind of wonder if it might be advised to maybe reopen the public hearing to at least maybe ask Becky some of these questions on what she would like to see, or what she would recommend, or what we can do to work this out.
Madam
And
Chair.
at that point, I would make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to reopen the public hearing for Oakmore subdivision H20180118 to pose additional questions to the applicant. Becky, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Becky McKay. Yeah, right now we are at, as a standalone, this is at 6.77% open space because we have detached sidewalks with 8-foot landscape buffers. It was included in the entire project where we were required to have a minimum of 10%. It was included in that. And when we have come in with replats of certain areas, we have looked at them from its entirety and has never been asked to make it stand on its own. But I can understand where the commission's coming from. And the question arose, you know, is this area here large enough to have some type of amenity? No, it's more just a road buffer because we're single loading this street. We have this common area here. We're going to have a pedestrian path that drops into Jump Creek here. We also have a pocket park right here. And so we'll have to have an amenity in this common area. As far as storm drainage, we'll be taking the storm drainage into this area here. So this common area could be enhanced, and if we, you know, reorient this area, then even make that a little bit larger, but put an amenity right here. So they'd have an activity. And I think that's doable, and I think that would kind of solve the concerns that the commission has, the distance between this kind of outline parcel over by itself on Black Cat and the distance to the central amenity. So I guess that's what I would suggest is, that there be an amenity here and try to augment that when I reconfigure this prior to going to the council, and get the client to indicate what type of amenity we can put in that space.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Becky, before you go away, could we clarify what we're going to do with the West Tap sublateral? It looks like currently it was untiled. I don't know if the plan is probably to ground it, I would assume.
Yeah, it's going to have to be piped. We've been working with Creason Lateral Association and the downstream users on the ditches. So we're trying to get that kind of hammered out. It's still in flux at this time till we get the actual association approval.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So before you leave, I'm just trying to figure out how to formulate a motion with this. So you said you're at 6.77, and I don't know what that is or what.
Half acre.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out, I don't want to just say add more open space because that's pretty vague, and I'd like to be a little bit more. I don't know if you could actually get 10% with adding that additional space there, but I don't want to tie your hands to lose an extra lot because you're probably going to lose a lot anyways. I don't want you to lose a second lot. You gotta, it's kind of hard for me to feel. You probably have a better feel for what's there and what we could potentially do. I'm trying to figure out how best to phrase that to give you some direction but not tie your hands too closely. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I guess to try to quantify it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think you can get to the 10%, or is 9 probably?
10 I would probably have to lose. If I'm at 6.77 and I'm a half acres, I'd have to, I don't have my calculator on me.
Madam Chair, were you looking at giving up a lot in those with that when you reconfigure that?
Well,
up top?
In trying to shorten this, we're required to shorten this shared drive. So in shortening that driveway, I'm going to have to reconfigure these lots and most likely have to probably go from 4 to 3. So in doing that and reconfiguring that, then that would allow me to augment the area that I already have here, and then I could identify what that amenity would be prior to going to the council. So that, I guess, to try to specify it, the commission would add a condition of approval that some additional open space be added to the adjoining common area at the southwest corner, and an amenity identified for the benefit of these residents prior to the council hearing. Bill, is that?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think that's amenable to staff because this particular common lot is not part of the plat, and it's inside of that realm of that DA modification. I think that would be appropriate to give staff that recommendation, and we'll carry that forward and make sure that that's captured in the DA mod staff report that we present to City Council.
Sorry, I was you were running the calculator. I calculated about 11,000 square feet, which is probably a little, the extra 3%. And so what were you proposing? I missed that. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess in the motion that prior to council review of the preliminary plat, we have to reconfigure this area to bring it in compliance with the fire department, which I anticipate this will have to go to probably 3 lots versus the 4. So the motion would include a condition that prior to going on to the council that we augment the adjoining common area on the southwest corner and then identify an amenity that would benefit these 18 lots right here.
Okay. I think that'd be reasonable.
And those lots aren't a quarter acre, but one of them, I'm guessing, is probably about 9,000 square feet or
Yep.
so. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli?
can I take us into the weeds for a second?
Haven't we been there?
Not you.
Becky, did you have a drawing on your presentation with the road, basically with it flipped, with the road on the southern boundary?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, we did try both.
And-
We tried it both ways.
My thought there, not necessarily with all the common space and whatnot, but the fourplexes down below, the higher density down below, getting it, instead of those homes backing up to that, you got the road that would be abutting that. Did that work?
When we flipped it, it didn't work as well trying to interconnect with, at the time, West Bridge was going through the process. So this is a drawing that my team put together, and I sent it over to Bill, so that while your staff was reviewing West Bridge, because they were being required, I believe, to have landscaping all along there. Bill, is that? No, it was Jump Creek that had a landscape buffer all along their northern boundary, because we had the street adjacent to them. And so then when we flipped it, then that allowed them to get rid of that buffer and enhance their open space here, or consolidate it. And this just seemed to work out better for all three properties. So I did coordinate with Dave Bailey, who's doing Jump Creek and West Bridge, and I did coordinate with the staff while West Bridge was processing to make sure that we could get all these bits and pieces to fit together. The sad part is that these were all done in the county with splits. And so here you had these 7-8 acre parcels that had one single family dwelling, and they were all kind of oddball shaped pieces. And so we tried to make it so that all these puzzle pieces would fit together. As far as compatibility, residential is compatible with residential. The fact that we do have Black Cat, which is a major arterial, and the fact that these lots are a little bit larger, that's going to be a trade-off for them. I want a larger backyard, but I have a fourplex to the south of me. This is going to be constructed well before us. This is going to be one of our latter phases. So as far as these future homeowners, they'll know exactly what's in the rear yard before they ever agree to purchase or build a custom home on those lots. This parcel just doesn't work out for R15. It just didn't have enough depth to do anything. We tried fourplexes, we tried duplexes, we tried all different options, and it just really was not conducive. So that's kind of why we had to sit back and go, okay, what is really the highest and best use?
Okay.
And Madam Chair, and I would imagine if you move the road to the south, you'll lose even more lots in that little L piece because of your 150 foot set, requirement for the lot.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of issues with that, I see. Thank you for your.
Any other questions for the
Yes.
applicant? No. Can I get a motion? Oh,
I move
Commissioner
to
Hall?
close the public hearing.
okay.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Oakmore subdivision H2018-0118. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley?
I'm happy.
Good.
Just
I like that.
Thank you for sharing.
Now to try to make a motion.
Madam Chair, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of City Council of file number H 2018-0118 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of January 17, 2019, with the following modifications: that the driveway be reduced to meet fire code, and that the common lot on the southwest or northwest corner of the adjacent property be expanded into this subdivision to provide additional open space and another amenity to be brought before City Council and discussed there.
Second.
One quick question. Since it's already in the staff report that they need to shorten that common drive, do we need to include that as, we need to make any changes to that, or is our motion?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm not sure on the exact condition, but basically, I think if you want to amend the motion, just state that it needs to be corrected prior to City Council to comply with City Code with the fire staff's conditions. And I know Becky's working with the fire department and us on that, and she communicated that to us this afternoon. So that's all we want to do, is just want to make sure that it's all corrected and the commission, or excuse me, the council takes action on the correct plat that they're going to approve.
Okay. In that case, I think the motion was clear. Did we get a second? Mm-hmm. Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve Oakmore subdivision H20180118 with conditions. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we will open the public hearing for Oakwood subdivision H20180119. And we will take a moment to hear the staff report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The item before you next is Oakwood subdivision. It's for a rezone and preliminary plat. The site consists of about 16.5 acres of land. It's currently zoned R15 with a little section of R4 to the northeast. It's located near the intersection of North McDermott Road and West McMillan Road. To the north are single-family residential subdivisions, which is the Oaks, zoned R4, and an undeveloped parcel, which is zoned RUT in the county. To the south, future phases of the Oaks, zoned R4, and to the east, future phases of the Oaks, zoned R4. To the west, it's North McDermott Road with undeveloped land and land zoned RUT in the county. In 2008, the property was annexed and zoned as part of the Oak Creek subdivision, which is subject to the Oak Creek DA. In 2013, it was rezoned R15 and R4 and platted as part of the Oaks North when the property was expanded and split into the Oaks North and South, which had a new DA associated. The current DA includes concept plans with multifamily depicted on the subject property. Comprehensive plan, future land use designation is medium density residential. The applicant is requesting a rezone from R4 and R15 zones to R8 in a preliminary plat consisting of 82 single-family residential lots, 6 common lots, and 1 common driveway. Lots range in size from approximately 5,400 square feet to 8,600 for an average lot size of 5,843 square feet. Previously, the multifamily was proposed with this phase of development, which was consistent with R15 zoning. The applicant now requests R8 to make it consistent with the development that's proposed now. The gross proposed density for this development is 4.96 acres per unit, which is within the desired density for medium density residential. The applicant has submitted a separate modification to the development agreement which, to be consistent with the proposed development of the 100 single-family residential homes. The DA modification will be heard before the City Council on February 19th. Approval of this project is contingent on approval for the modification to the DA. 2 access points are currently proposed via West Cherry Brook Drive and West Vercelli Drive, both of which connect to future proposed phases of the Oaks. With the current proposed plat, the common driveway depicted meets UDC requirements. The fire department has requested an additional access as these 2 proposed access points don't meet the minimum spacing requirements for emergency access. Staff recommends that the applicant add 2 additional stub streets, one to the north in lieu of this common drive, and one to the south to provide better connectivity. 5-foot detached sidewalks are proposed throughout the development. Because of our concern with the open space and site amenities provided with this project, staff is recommending the applicant add a micropath to connect the southern portion of the subdivision through the future phases to the Oaks North. The addition of the micropath would provide usable open space and increase pedestrian connectivity through the subdivision. Renderings of a variety of the single-family residential detached homes are submitted with this application that demonstrate what future homes would look like. They're pretty similar to what's proposed throughout the development. As mentioned earlier, staff is concerned that the number of amenities provided with the overall development may not be adequate, since there was originally supposed to be multifamily here and they're required to provide 10% open space. And in this case, there are 200 multi-unit families, 200 multi-family units that were proposed, which would have been required to provide at least 5 amenities. Staff feels that the recommended micropath and continuation of the 10-foot multi-use pathway would provide usable open space for residents. There was no written testimony on this project. Staff is recommending approval with conditions in the staff report. And with that, staff will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
Just for clarification, so you are recommending in the staff report the additional amenities, or are you just concerned about the additional amenities?
In the staff report, we are recommending the micropath that extends from the south to the north. And I think I misspoke and said multi-use pathway, and I did not mean a 10-foot multi-use pathway on this one, just the micropath that's supposed to go from, I think I have a concept plan here, yeah. So kind of generally like this to extend to the future phase of the Oaks.
Well, near the end, you're talking about that this size of a property, you'd have to have so many amenities and that, but those aren't actually in the staff report to provide those.
No, no, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Yearsley, that was actually just mentioned to give you kind of context, because originally there was supposed to be multifamily here, and if there were to be 200 multifamily units, they'd be required to give 10% open space and at least 5 amenities. So just to kind of, I guess, provide some idea of the amenities that might have been there.
Okay, nope, that's why I just want to make sure I heard that correct.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any additional questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward again?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Becky McKay, Engineering Solutions, 1029 North Rosario Meridian. I'm here on the Oakwind development representing Toll Brothers. When I did Oaks North, as Stephanie indicated, that was 5 years ago. We had this property designated R15, and then the property to the south of it designated R15. Can you put mine up if you could? We didn't have any specific site plan for this area. We just had a target density of approximately 208 multifamily dwellings on this area here. And then what we showed on this R15 area was possible neighborhood mini storage. And the reason that we kind of designed it in this fashion is there'll be an overpass that'll start probably about in here, and it will, when Highway 16 comes through, the overpass for McMillan will have to go over Highway 16. McDermott Road will terminate, and we're building the bypass for McDermott, so it will bypass here, and then it comes and bypasses and then gets back in alignment. And McDermott will be downgraded from the current minor arterial that it is today to just a collector, because it will cul-de-sac and have no interconnection to Chinden Boulevard when Highway 16, the second phase of 16, goes in. So when Coleman Homes sold to Toll Brothers, they took a look at this area, had me lay it out, and said that it was their desire not to have multifamily here. We are retaining this R15 portion that's at this location, which I think is approximately 7.82 acres. It could be either multifamily or it could be neighborhood accessory mini storage. And then we relayed out the 208 units here, and we put in 82 single-family dwellings. So right now, this majority of this property is R15. There's just a kind of a sliver of R4. We're asking for a down zone from the R15 to the R8, and then the little sliver of R4 would go up zone to R8. As far as the lot sizes, they're between 5,600 and 8,600 square feet. And our overall density in this particular section is 4.96 dwelling units per acre. The qualified open space is 1.19 acres or 7.2% open space. We will have detached sidewalks with an 8-foot landscape buffer. I did review the staff report, and I had indicated to Stephanie that I disagreed on the additional stub streets. This is the Bentley parcel here, which is not a part of the Oaks development. That portion of the Bentley farm was retained by Mr. and Mrs. Bentley. We coordinated with them. We put a stub street here to the north. We also put a stub street here on their eastern boundary. That would allow their property to, it can sewer this way, and then they'll have a loop street that would come through, and I did do a layout on their property on how this property could redevelop in the future. To put another stub street here on the southern boundary, you put too many stub streets to a parcel, then pretty soon you're eating it up with a lot of street that's unnecessary that the public and Ada County Highway District has to maintain in perpetuity. Each one of those stub streets costs a significant amount of money. For a parcel this size, it needs 2 points of ingress and egress, which it will have. It will also have the collector McDermott on its western boundary, but if they so choose, they could take internal access through us with these 2 points of access. I did talk with the fire department. We have 2 access points into our project, but they measure half the diagonal distance under the International Fire Code. And so Joe indicated he wanted not a public street access, but a micropath or emergency vehicle access here. The reason I don't want to put a vehicular access is because this is that McDermott collector bypass that's going to come through. So I'm trying to orient this internally into the Oaks project and not put something on an approach on that bypass to further create any congestion, because we will have accesses into this parcel from the Trident collector and then the McDermott bypass collector. As far as the micropaths, I did agree with Stephanie. Micropath here makes sense between lots 8 and 9 because we'll be piping the Creason lateral, and then we'll have a 14-foot pathway that'll go through the project linking from east to west. So that would be a good linkage right there at the end of that. I didn't understand the need for a micropath here because my block length, when I measure from here to here, is less than 750 feet. And they were asking for a micropath at this block, and that's only 450 feet. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me. As far as amenities are concerned, this was a buildable lot right here. We have eliminated that and made that into a common lot, so it will have an amenity, and then I installed a micropath here to link it to the rest of the project. So as far as linkage, they'll go directly, oops. Oop. So they'll come up through this micropath, and then they'll be able to go directly down that 14-foot pathway right into the central amenity right here. This is the lot right here that we eliminated and made a big pocket park with a micropath here. So these residents can also come up this direction if they so choose, and they'll be able to recreate here. What else was I going to tell you? So really what we've done is we've reduced it by 126 units. Staff talks about, well, with the multifamily, there would have been some additional amenities, but there would have been a considerable larger number of people in units. We have 82 in here instead of 208. We think it's just, you know, from Toll's perspective, they want to see the diversity in the lot sizes, and that's what we're giving them. We have our smaller lots along the McMillan corridor, which is a minor arterial, and then along the McDermott corridor with the Highway 16 here, and some smaller lots here. And then as we go through the interior, we have our mid-size lots, and then our larger lots are all up in the northern and eastern area. So we are, you know, it's not a single product type development. It meets their targeting needs. We have pocket parks that are, you know, throughout this and linear open space where we'll have amenities. Can I answer any questions?
Questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland?
Becky, could you talk a little bit about the western boundary that's going to be backing up to McDermott and how much of a buffer there's really going to be between the back of those residences and the future Highway 16?
Along here, we have 35 feet. There's 50 feet of existing right-of-way for McDermott right now. When ITD comes in and purchases right-of-way, they will purchase 300 feet beyond the 50 feet of existing right-of-way, and then they will center their state highway right in that 300 feet. And I think they indicated to me it's a 78-foot street section is what they built in phase 1. And so it will be off to the west. It will not be adjoining McDermott.
One other follow-up question to that. Is there going to be any sort of berm that kind of rises up above to shield those homes from the traffic that's going behind it?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Holland, yes, there will be berming and fencing along there.
Thank you.
Can you bring up the entire concept plan? Did Stephanie step out? Is there any possibility, Becky, of those lots there on the south on McMillan are very dense, and it seems like that area doesn't have as much common space in relationship to the number of actual housing units as some of the other areas. Is there any way to, I know you're going to put that one, you're going to add that one lot in that you just mentioned, but that's probably...
Right here?
Yeah, not even a 5th acre, I assume. Is there any way to get just a little more common, and those lot sizes are small enough that the backyards are going to be small. So I'm wondering if there's a way to get some additional green space in that southeast section.
Yeah, what we could do is, you can see here's that lot located here, and then we have the micropath that links. So what we could do is extend this area so that it's enlarged, adjust these lots, and extend that area right there so that it's one continuous through the whole block. So it would be more like, kind of like this open space here and here. where it takes up the whole block. We have another open space that's like that.
Okay.
But yeah, we just basically extend it through here.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair. Oh,
Commissioner?
so just looking at the 16.5 acres, you're looking at just a minimum of 10%, 1.65 acres of open space just for this piece. It feels to me like we're trying to add more density here and require the open space to be filled someplace else. As you can tell, my open space is kind of a top priority for me at this point. I like what you're doing, proposing over here. And I know you do have some open space already in here. Would that get us pretty close if you added that additional to the 10%? I'm not quite sure what other open space you have.
We're at 7.2% or 1.19 acres.
Okay.
And I think we have to have, 1.65? Is that right? 1.65 acres?
Yeah.
So
I
are
think-
you thinking the open space should be?
No. I didn't know what you had open space here.
Okay.
And I was just asking if you took out that lot and added it a little bit wider, if that would actually be pretty close. But if you've already got the 1.9, taking out that lot and adding a little bit more would probably be pretty close to that 10%
pretty
open
close.
space.
So those lots are probably about, I don't have the dimensions on there, but I'm guessing they're probably 0.15 or so. If there's two of them, be it a third.
Yeah, they're averaging
They're averaging about,
5,843 square feet. So they are smaller
yeah.
than the R4 lots in the Oakmore portion.
And I was referring to the lots you were talking about
Oh,
on the.
those lots
in-
are large.
In the, right, in the.
Yeah, those
in the north
those were,
for the.
these are
yes.
bigger, a lot bigger. You can see just by the comparison, yes.
Yeah,
These are running probably 11,000 square
Okay.
feet.
Ma'am.
10 to 11.
so are you suggesting taking out a second lot and then including the pathway?
We could
Or just,
we could eliminate, then have this be the central open space that would serve this neighborhood. And it would be located just basically across the street. And then they'd have their linkage to the Creason lateral pathway through the micropath.
that required, that would be a DA modification.
Would this require a DA
Yeah.
modification? No.
No, okay.
No. If we eliminate a buildable lot and add open space, in fact, in phase one right now, we have added open space. Just to kind of let you know, because I did send Stephanie kind of a quick calculation. So in our first phase, we have 25.91% open space.
Okay,
So we are very cognizant on making sure that we distribute that open space evenly throughout the neighborhood and get those amenities. And it's a priority to Toll. Like I said, they have people back east that's all they do is design amenities. And I've seen some of their designs. I just received one for a project in Eagle, and it's like an 11,000 square foot community center with indoor pool and all kinds of fitness room, great room and stuff. And so I'm definitely going to pass on Commissioner Casanelli's, comment that with the size of and magnitude of Oaks North, that that central amenity needs to shine and needs to be a size that accommodates everyone, along with all the other pocket park amenities.
definitely, this is a mile long. This is not small. This is a
No.
very large development.
It is.
And as Bill was mentioning, several of the other developments that are a mile by a mile have, 4 different sections with different pools or amenities, larger parks, so.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I did Bridge Tower, and we had
Bridge Tower.
two community centers, 2 pools, multiple playgrounds, green space, yep, pathways.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Becky, did you look at going out to McDermott? Because you've got the 2 access points. That's not a collector where those 2 access points are.
No, this is not a collector roadway.
Okay. So you've got 80-something homes funneling right out to that roadway that's not a collector. McDermott, I guess my thought is that if you were to go out to the west, McDermott is going to be a pretty quiet road there if that's going to be a cul-de-sac up to the north. There's not going to be a whole lot of traffic on that. Taking an access out there, would that make the fire department a little bit more amenable to what they need?
I did not, Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, I did not discuss taking an access out to McDermott. Ada County Highway District policy requires that we take access to the lesser street network. So since McDermott is still designated a minor arterial on the master street map, I don't think ACHD would allow me to have an access out to McDermott at this time. It has not been downgraded. And then we have the McDermott bypass as a collector, and then we have Trident as a collector. So the less intensive street network is this local street right here. As far as my number of trips per day, I'm well within my threshold. As you can see, we have pretty much an even distribution of traffic. We feed all of our traffic out to our central collector. This collector roadway will go on north and serve the interior, comes down. Right now, 6 Mile Engineers is designing a roundabout, and we are doing a design for widening and sidewalk all along McMillan Road up to this McDermott bypass. So I don't believe ACHD would allow me to put an access at McDermott, because we don't know what's the timeline is for Highway 16, second phase. So like I said, it's a minor arterial. But I'm not overloading my streets because we just don't have that much volume on this street. I have a short cul-de-sac here. Everything else is kind of feeding out.
So to be clear, you're proposing to meet the fire department's request to just put in emergency access on the south side with
Yes.
pathway?
Yes, so we'd put an emergency vehicle access right here, which would also serve as a pedestrian access. Then I'd put a pedestrian access located here. Then that would meet the fire department requirements.
And they would not need to move the distance between the 2 exits then, is that correct?
That is
The-
correct.
The 2 streets?
The 2 streets would remain the same.
Okay.
That would just they would only use this in the event that they needed a second way in and there was blockage on both streets simultaneously.
They're exiting the same
Which
location.
is highly unlikely when you have all the different interconnectivity within the project.
What will happen to the lots there that are showing on this section on the east side? If there's going to be, okay, so that's that section
So
where you're
those
going to put the
streets-
additional.
right, those streets come in here.
Come through
So
those.
all
That'll
your,
be
what we
altered.
changed is that street is single loaded now.
Okay.
And both those approaches come in like this.
Okay.
And I tried to get the landscape architect to update this plan to incorporate that in, and they were just slammed with some deadlines and couldn't get to it. So I know I'm bouncing back and forth, which you're having to try to envision, you know, what that looks like.
Okay, so that we don't have to potentially reopen the public hearing, do we have any additional questions for the applicant prior to closing or hearing public testimony?
Madam Chair, so I guess I'm just going to say this right now because Becky's here. I think for me, what I'm looking at right now is I like your idea of having the path to the north and the emergency access to the south. I think that's adequate. However, I would like to see it pretty close to that 1.6 acres for open spaces. That's what I'm looking at. For me is the most important, just given where we're at in that corner and that stuff. And so is that acceptable to you, I guess? At least for my side, you know, I don't know what the other commissioners are, but, you know, because I was just looking at, ran some quick calcs. You know, if you're at 1.19, if the 11,000 gets you, close, but it's still like another 9,000 short for the 1.16. So we're looking at needing another about 9,000 square feet of open space.
Are you thinking consolidate these two lots into this open space here?
I am not going to dictate how that is done.
Just
I would like to see
meet the
10%.
And
Understood.
to be clear, Commissioner Yearsley, you mean within this?
Within this pocket.
No,
Within this property.
Not within this. If you're going to take out a lot over here,
Oh, okay.
you know, as close to it as possible,
Provide staff evidence
Yes.
that we are meeting what the open space requirement would be for this property, either internally or on the lots across, the open space across the street.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I guess in the conditions, we're asking you to eliminate condition A, C, and then modify the A2C and modify A2D so that we just have the one micropath here, because the micropaths here just don't really make any sense and aren't required under the ordinance. And then we do the emergency vehicle access, which would be a micropath also there. And under 3A, it also talks about the additional micropaths. So we would retain, add micropath between lot 9 and 8, block 1. The rest would be eliminated. And then provide emergency vehicle access to the south, which will also double as a micropath. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to take public testimony. Is there anyone signed up to testify?
Madam Chair, nobody has signed in.
Is there anyone present who would like to come forward and testify? Okay, thank you.
Too far out.
I'm assuming that we don't have any more conversation to have with the applicant.
Madam Chair, I just have one. Madam Chair, I just
Commissioner
have
Holland.
one more thought. I know we talked about eliminating some of the staff recommendations of stub streets, but I wonder, to Commissioner Casanelli's point, if maybe the south entrance, rather than just being a fire entrance only, still might be something that we do as a stub street. It may not make sense right now, but once McDermott becomes that quiet street and Highway 16 comes through, I think it would be appropriate to have another entrance there. Maybe not right now, but I don't know if there's a way to condition it where it could be a fire entrance now but be expanded to be an access point later, if that's something possible.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I wouldn't recommend that because that's come back and bit us and it never gets converted back to a public street. So it does pose a challenge. Typically, we've seen it go the other way, create it as a street and then revert it back to something else. But again, it's your purview. You have the fire department's comments. My only recommendation, and I'd like to get clarification from the applicant, if the commission does choose to side with an emergency access only along the south, whether you want to see it a paved access or a grasscrete or some kind of integrated fire pedestrian access, so it just doesn't look like 20 feet of asphalt with a gate across it. I think we want some kind of aesthetics to it, or some kind of look. I know in other subdivisions, I've seen that where they've done the grasscrete and had 5-foot pathway still, and it turned out fairly nice. So it's something maybe the applicant could expand on in their rebuttal.
Bill, so that substreet would connect to collector. Is there a difference in width or sidewalk requirements or anything like that because it's connecting to a collector versus if it was not?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, no, it's just comply with ACHD standards.
Okay.
Now, I would mention to the commission that, our code tries to limit connections to collectors and arterial roadways, and but given the concerns from the fire department that they need another secondary access, we're amenable to it being a public street and or the emergency access. We just want to support our team member.
Even though that is a collector, folks are they're not going to, they can't connect out to McDermott in a different area because there's no exit, so they're not going to use that section of the subdivision to pass through, I can't imagine, for any reason.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley?
Having that being a public access, that they could do a future street but have it landscaped as a grasscrete or emergency access at this time, I think serves that purpose that we're looking for, but it gives us the flexibility in the future if we ever need it. And I think that's a fair compromise, in my opinion.
Bill, the staff's concern on that primarily is coming from the fire department's recommendations, or was there anything else in addition to that for what staff recommended?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we like interconnectivity for sure, and that's what we've always pushed for, and that's when we had our project review meetings. Those were some of the comments that we received from our other partnering agencies, that they wanted to see additional substreets, and so staff went ahead and recommended some of the addition of those substreets. Again, there's other agencies that come into play to that, and fire department has communicated they'll support staff in either way, but the minimum per code is the emergency access to that south boundary. But staff has recommended a substreet along that south and north boundary.
If I understood the applicant correctly, that area to the south, there was conversation about it being mini storage, but also potentially single family. And in order for those owner or the residents there to access the common areas for, we want to make sure they can do that, and they might need to do that by vehicle and not walking. Although they can, if they're exiting out over to the collector on the east side, then they could take that route to get into the central common area. But I don't know where that, I don't know where the exit would be out of that that property, whether it would be to the north or to the east. But that somewhat eliminates access to, well, not really. If whatever the use is for the property to the south, if they don't exit to the east and they exit to the north, then that's going to minimize their ability to get into the common areas. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holland?
I don't know if we need the applicant's testimony on anything else, but if we don't, I'd be happy to make a motion to close the public hearing so we can continue deliberation.
That we already closed the public hearing, didn't we? Oh, no. All right.
Just want to make sure we're not going to have to reopen it.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have this discussion while it's still open, and then we can close it to make a motion.
Absolutely.
Since there's potential of having the applicant back up.
Exactly.
So then, Madam Chair,
Mr. Holland?
my recommendation would be to, I think the northern part I'm okay eliminating the substreet on, but the south part, I think it needs to at least have one more point of connectivity into the neighborhood at some point. And I think that to the south makes the most sense, where there's going to be a kind of bypass road coming through there to give it a little bit more accessibility. I also agree with Commissioner Yearsley that there should be more open space, and I feel comfortable with requiring the 10% that they meet that. I'd like to see a little bit more in this actual phase of green space because it's a pretty dense development of a lot of homes. To have a little bit more if we can, but I think requiring 10% would make me feel more comfortable at least. My only other concern too was what I mentioned too, with just being backed up next to McDermott and Highway 16. I know it's going to be tough for those neighbors when that road comes through and it's a lot louder than they expected. So I don't know that we need to condition it because it sounds like they're planning to put a berm and a fence on there, but just that would help buffer sound as much as possible.
I thought, Commissioner, or Madam Chair, I thought that that was in the staff report requiring the berm.
I think it's a
fence.
35-foot buffer with a 3-foot berm. Is that right?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, yes, it's a 3-foot berm with, we conditioned that they put the 6-foot fence on top of the berm. And then there's a 35-foot landscape buffer and.
25?
No, 35.
35.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, just some more history on this. When this project was redesigned and reapproved back in 2013, there was a condition in the DA that required the landowner to notify any future homeowners that there's a state highway coming through their backyard. Well, not necessarily their backyard, but it'll be several hundred feet away from the boundary of this particular plat. So I know I personally looked at the marketing materials that Coleman put out at the time, and they did add that information to inform their homeowners. So I just let you know that anyone buying there shouldn't be made aware that, if they read, should be made aware that there's actually a state highway that's going to parallel State Highway 16, or excuse me, McDermott Road.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Bill, on the original development agreement, was you had mentioned earlier that there was a call for at least some office. I mean, also multifamily, which really there isn't now at this point in here. But is there, getting out there, what kind of services are they going to be in terms of either office or light commercial?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, that's something that disappeared when the Oaks West came in. We actually had the applicant process a comp plan amendment to get rid of kind of that commercial designation. At one point, there was office designation at the mid-mile, and because we were changing that portion of the site from office, future park, multifamily to single family, that particular developer just took his piece of property, amended the DA, and extracted his property and entered into a new DA. So it's no longer under the Oaks umbrella. So that's some of the cleanup that we need to do with the modification. But as far as service in this immediate area, everything is funneling back to the 10-mile McMillan intersections. That's where all the CG, where the Walmart is. All of that commercial is happening about 1.5 miles, 2 miles to the east. And there's quite a bit of vacant commercial already in that area. So that was some of the justification of why we didn't feel office was necessary at the 1/2 mile there at McMillan and in between McDermott and Black Cat.
Is there no plan out in that area, even at Black Cat and McMillan, to have anything out that way?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, nothing in the immediate vicinity. Everything would be up along Chinden Corridor at this point in time, but we are in the middle of a comprehensive plan update, and starting next month, we will be reaching out to property owners in this area and asking them to attend several neighbor night meetings to discuss what they kind of envision in that area, to see if there are any changes desired from our citizens.
It's not too far from 16 in Chinden, where they're going to bring in the new development there with the hospital, and well, that's proposed with some other services there as well.
It would be nice if, with that large of a development, if there was some, if there were some walkable just a little, you know, a little neighborhood center that's walkable, it's bikeable.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, I know right now the comp plan committee is looking at several focus areas for the future use map too, and there's been a lot of conversations in that committee about this area with how that highway is going to intersect. So I know there's a lot of conversations still happening about thinking about future commercial, and nothing's been solidified by any means, but I know there's conversations about future proposed commercial near that area, especially since there's a high school that we've been hearing as well.
Yep.
So I think there will be more conversations about commercial in that area, especially with that highway coming through. That helps.
Yeah.
But if McDermott gets downgraded to a collector, then residential is a little bit more reasonable, I guess, well, reasonable is not the right word, to have there. I mean, it's if that wasn't happening, I would say I'm not as in favor of having residential in that location, but.
Madam Chair, I was on the commission when this was initially heard, and we talked, and I remember that being the big discussion with McDermott being just an overpass and it's not going to be in a destination where people were going to want to go. And so that's kind of why we felt that you'll more likely have probably more of a business center on 10 Mile and McDermott, and probably to the north and to the south at the interchanges. And so we didn't feel that there was a commercial piece that was really that would be viable at this location was our biggest concern.
Mr. Holland, have something to say?
Good.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm good as well, so.
Okay, great. Can we get a motion to close the public hearing then?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Oakland subdivision H20101119. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
none opposed. Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli?
another question for staff. How do we go about dealing with the requirements of the amenities and whatnot in the entire, because that's a comment in this one and the previous one that we did. So how do we
Madam
address
Chair.
that? How do we?
Commissioner McCarville?
Can we just use the verbiage of as stated by the applicant in her presentation?
I don't mean just that open space across the, that we're going to tie into that, but
Are you asking
Overall.
if we need addition to?
I'm talking
require
about
additional
overall amenities throughout the entire development.
I don't think we can,
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Casanelli, Becky's stated that she's actually going to be submitting a list of amenities, and she's given me an updated list from what they have now for phase one. And they're also, I think, planning on giving us a concept plan of where those amenities are going to be located and where the open space is. So that's something that we can, talk with them and work with them on. I don't know what the availability or how quickly they'll be able to get that to us, but we can work with them on that.
probably just like
To
we did
kinda
the
get a better
last one,
feel.
so just prior to council that they have it.
But we can't require, can we?
We can ask them to have additional amenities within the location of this.
That we're working,
Specific
yeah.
application if you'd like.
But not the Oaks North.
No, I don't think so.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, as we discussed at the previous hearing, the previous item, we talked about what you can do with this phase and what you can do with the DA mod. And if you want more amenities with the DA mod, then you can forward that recommendation on to City Council with the plats, and then staff will analyze that. And as we do the staff report for the DA modification, we can inform the council that commission had a recommendation that more amenities be provided within the development than just the code minimums.
Okay, so.
And I think you had a commitment from the applicant that they may be entertaining a clubhouse for this particular development. And I think something of this size probably warrants that type of amenity. I really do. This is a big, big development out here. We're talking, again, almost 400 acres. between Oaks North and Oaks South. So I think a lot of the communities out there have that. They have pools, they have open space, they have all of those recreational amenities, and I think this is one of those that warrants a real hard look at it, and that's why we bring it to your attention. So if that clubhouse is something that you're eager to get, we can certainly put that in our staff report for the MDA and tell council that during the commission of the subdivisions that the commission had recommended that council incorporate a clubhouse as part of this development as an amenity.
So tonight we can make the recommendations for the modification of the DA.
Have staff take that under advisement as we prepare that staff report, and we can forward that dialogue onto city council in our staff report for you.
82 homes is not small, and I wouldn't mind requesting an amenity in that park expansion they're going to do just to the east, because there isn't I mean, if we're looking at this and as it's sitting completely entirely on its own, not part of another development, 82 homes is not a small subdivision.
No.
So that is something we can.
Yeah.
Can you pull up the one that shows the entire Oaks North while we're? Thank you.
And I think Bill's I think hit it right on the nose. You know, we need to recommend that the council look at what's being provided, what's currently provided, or what's being added from one way we initially looked at it, and make sure that there's enough amenities sufficient with this size of development. I don't want to dictate that they have to have a certain, well, at least for me, I don't want to dictate exactly, you know, you have to have so many amenities, but, you know, let's make sure we're appropriate to comparable size subdivisions to at least make sure we have a good subdivision, especially one of this size.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm thinking what might be appropriate in that space with the smaller lots is something for small kids, because I mean, just envision that's kind of a curved, almost blind spottish little road going through there, and if the little kids want to run over that green space, I'd like to keep them on their side of that road. The bigger kids can get across it, but that's just my 2 cents. If we're going to add more green space in that square.
So you're suggesting to put something within the open space that exists on this application?
Well, that, I mean, and I think it would be beneficial, I mean, because there's not a lot to this whole south end.
Yep.
And it's all pretty dense house down there, but anyway.
So to be clear, are you saying that you'd like it to exist within the open space on this parcel or in the section that we were discussing earlier?
I'm opening the discussion. I'd like to hear other thoughts.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McCarville, I tend to agree. I think that's going to be a busy road entering into this neighborhood, and there's going to be a lot of cars screaming by to get into their neighborhood and their subdivision, and I'd hate to hear of an accident of a 3-year-old getting run over somewhere trying to get to the park.
Yeah, it's a rounded corner, which is going to invite a little bit of quicker traffic, and then you've got the exit out there to McMillan. It's going to be a busy corner, and I just don't know that that's the best place for kids running across.
Question first, can we make a recommendation on a specific amenity or just that they have one within this application?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we have multiple amenities described in the code. So it can be a tot lot, sport court. I mean, that goes to why staff had recommended the micropath connection. It had nothing to do with the block length. It had everything to do with, I remember working on this project, and Becky does a great job. And she has, her subdivisions, even looking at her previous subdivisions, have a lot of interconnectivity and a lot of pathways. And that's the selling point of this particular development, is all of those interconnected pathways and walkways that people can stay in the community and walk and have an exercise loop throughout the community. And we felt there should have been more open space with this particular development. And we thought, well, a 15-foot wide micropath through the entire development gives you the more usable open space. You can count it towards an amenity, therefore satisfying our concern for additional open space and the micropath and the walkways consistent with the overall development plan for this development. And that's why we went that route. We didn't want the applicant to lose lots. That wasn't the goal of staff. We realized that's a pretty nice development out there. We're not knocking that one bit. But what we just feel like it's changed so much from what it was to where it's going now, and it's changing into a suburban development, for lack of a better term. That's what it is. It's just more of the same, and just more R8, R4 lots, and so it's a large development, and so we want to make sure that whatever community goes out there and whatever develops there has a proportionate share of open space and amenities. That's the best way to look at it. And I've been before this body numerous times talking about looking at our open space standards, looking at our amenities. Are they too low? Do they need to be changed? Do we need to change our minimums to ensure that we get proportionate sized open space and amenities for subdivisions? And Becky has been actually a proponent of that too. She's never wavered. She's never balked about having to do more open space and amenities. So it's not a knock on her by any means, but we want you to really think about this. We're opening up the development agreement. We're changing this plan one more time. And this just is something that we want to bring to your attention, that we feel it's important that we do it right. And that's why we're highlighting it so much tonight and having you dive in on it, because we just feel like there should be more open space and more amenities because of it changing from that multifamily to that single family component. It's just a different dynamic that you're putting out there. Yes, it may be, one could argue it's less traffic or more traffic, less dense or more dense, but the reality is the people that buy in here are expecting a certain amount of open space and amenities that they'll have to pay into and use. The multifamily development comes in, they have their own open space and own amenities for that particular. That's the difference here, is they have the right to share everything. The multifamily development would have been contained and had to provide their own, and that's why we highlighted that for you.
In addition to it being currently a location where there aren't any city parks existing, and I don't know what the future plan is or will be for that. They're isolated in that way.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I believe the nearest, well, there's Keith Bird Park on the other section to the east. So there's a couple, and then Heroes Park, which is off of 10 Mile. But the next regional park, I believe, is south off of Ustick, is what's out there now, McDermott, Ustick area, somewhere in that area. And there will be schools in the area too. There's a middle school that will be north of this project, and then we have the elementary school coming online too. So, I mean, there's a lot happening out there. We're growing, and certainly, again, those are things that we're just asking you to take under consideration tonight.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
I'm just curious. I do like the micropath on the north end of it. I would agree that what Becky has done in previous stuff we've seen, they're very innovative in their amenities and open to that. So I would hate to tie him to using that micropath as an amenity if she's got something else in mind that could be pretty fabulous in that corner somewhere.
Agree.
I think I like the micropath up to that other path, but leave the other conditions open that it reached the 10% mark, and leave it up to her.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McCarville, are you specifying that the cherry bark to the north and not the Vercelli to the, skipping between where it says phase 1 and phase 2 and just doing that part on the top?
Yeah, just north of the cherry bark.
Yeah.
Around
the way
lot
the
9
applicant
area.
had discussed it, yeah.
Between lots 8 and 9.
Yeah, that reaches this corner area, connects it with that major pathway that's going up there.
Sorry, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I just had a conversation with Becky. She's indicated to me that, I don't have my mouse here, let me get it. It's difficult to explain something from a computer you can't see. So Becky's explained to me that she's willing to blow out maybe 2 of these lots, like you saw in the overall area, reduce some of this open space along the open street, the local street, and then put that PED connection in there and have that additional amenity in here so you get it more internal to the development. And so she wouldn't so eliminate the micropath through this block, just have that wider usable open space here, keep the micropath lot here, shrink this one, and then still kind of get you closer to that 10% for this particular development. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Now I'm happy.
If you get a tot lot.
If someone gets to be happy, I get to be happy too.
Getting to the 10% in this, internally in there. Madam Chair, just comment. I don't, Bill, if you could pull up the whole master image again. There aren't necessarily micropaths throughout. There's the pathway system along the roads and there's detached sidewalks, but there aren't micropaths that I'm seeing anywhere else. So I don't know that we really, what Becky just decided on, I think that works. Don't necessarily, I'm not, a micropath to the north to get out to the, to that pathway along the lateral would be, if that could still be done, I would like to see that. That's my thought on the micropaths. But if we get that wider green space through that one block, I'd be happy on that too.
And Commissioner McCarville, would you still like to see an amenity there for smaller children? Is that?
I think they'll design something pretty fabulous.
So leave it to the applicant's discretion.
So are we requiring an amenity,
though?
Are we
requiring an amenity?
I think you require an amenity, yeah.
Okay.
I think.
I will make, Madam Chair.
Mr. Castanelli?
If my recommendation on kind of moving sideways a little bit to the overall development agreement would be to either look at a second pool in there or making sure that that pool and the parking is large enough to accommodate the entire north side of this, something along the lines of Paramount's main pool and clubhouse, or some other ones that are out there. But I think that needs to definitely be looked at. Because the subdivision I live in, the pool we have, and it's not that big, we got about 350 homes. It's not adequate. And
There's mine.
Every summer you go over there, it's like, forget it, I'm not going in here. And people are, everybody, more than 3 blocks away, they drive to the pool. It's the reality. And so there's not enough parking, and the pool is way too small, and so half the subdivision is just like, forget it.
I'm in the exact same situation, identical to that. 350 homes, tiny pool. Most people don't use it.
Why bother? Yeah.
Yeah. And then
so
a few disgruntled homeowners that don't want to pay HOA dues for a pool they don't use.
Yep. Yep.
So.
I think we can all echo that same story, so. And I don't know who's going to make the motion, but at least I think we ought to recommend that the staff look at the entire subdivision as a whole and verify that there's enough amenities and make sure that gets updated in the DA agreement.
So to recap, we want to discuss the stub street to the south, if we'll ask for one, or leave it with the applicant's request, whether we're going to request a micropath all the way through or just from that central area to the north.
I think we're all in agreement, the central to the north, you know, the micropath, and then have the access to the south be a street access, but a landscape to be emergency, you know, that they can open it up in the future if necessary. I believe that's kind of what we talked about, if I remember right.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Yearsley, I think staff had recommended not to do that because it won't typically convert well in the future. So they had asked us if we were going to require future use of it being a stub street to, no, I'm misunderstanding.
I think it was, we have it as a stub street, but landscaped to an emergency access.
No.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, no, we want one or the other.
Okay.
We either want stub street or an emergency access, but we want it to be integrated in part of the landscaping if it is an emergency access.
Okay.
With bollards or gate or grasscrete, or don't even gate it off, just make it look like landscaping, like they did in Fall Creek subdivision. They had the same situation out to Stoddard. It works well, looks great.
Okay.
Can't even tell it's there.
Like he said.
This is the one item I'm torn on, because I know this, I assume that the applicant is going to retain this piece of property and not sell it. But if not, then in some ways it could potentially limit what goes there if there's not any access to that section. So that's my only hesitation with keeping it landscaped emergency access. I don't have an answer for it, but.
Would you prefer to see access, one of those two roads, access to the south?
One of the two roads?
The two access points.
Not necessarily, and I'm not concerned about it from a traffic standpoint per se, because just shortly to the south, you're going to hit the collector right there that's connecting to McMillan. I'm just talking about connectivity to the lot to the south. That's my concern. If the lot to the south is turned into multifamily, which it very well could be, then you're going to lose not only walking but driving access into the park that's in the middle of that. Then you're, as Commissioner McCarville mentioned, if people are exiting out of that lot to the south to the east, that's a collector road. It's going to be a lot of traffic coming in to get to any kind of green space. If they are going to keep that as a mini storage, well, then that's not as much of a concern, but we don't know that at this time.
Madam Chair, my preference would still be to see it be stubbed street, so that would connect in with Daphne at some point in the future for fire, police, safety and circulation for future development.
Mm-hmm.
I think if that property to the south does go multifamily, it's going to have its own internal green space and amenities. I don't think
It's
would be
likely, but it's my understanding that the intention of this entire community is that it's all shared. So I don't know.
I think they'd be
May or may
going
not
more towards the pool than a little pocket park to the north, if they have their own amenities.
They might, but if they're accessing onto Daphne, which is a collector, they need a safe way to get up to the pool, and they would have to access onto a collector, take another collector up, and potentially go through another. There's not pedestrian access, is the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay. There would be, and I'm not trying to argue,
But there would be if
there will be with that emergency
yeah,
access.
But because the pool is, there's not pedestrian access, but because the pool is a significant distance, as you mentioned, that people drive, if I don't know what the requirements are going to be on that piece. If they're going to be permitted to access to the east, I don't know if they can or they can't, because that's going to be an entrance or a collector area. So I don't know if they're going to put an exit on that lot out to the east side. It's not as much of a concern, but I don't know.
So if there's an exit out to the north?
To the north, then.
My preference overall would be to not have both entrances coming out onto that one road. I would like to see. I would prefer one out onto that. Well, I guess it's not a collector there. I'd prefer to see one to the east and one to the south. No, I'm
to the north.
Right now, there's two coming out to that to the one street, and that's not a collector there.
No.
What my preference would be to see one access onto that road and one to the south.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
And then that would have the south, like you're talking.
It's not a stub street, it's actual access that they put
Yeah.
in. Okay. And what's the thinking behind that?
To spread some of that. Right now, you have all 82 lots accessing off that one street. So it would split that up a little bit.
Okay. My guess is on both of those streets, however, that nearly everyone will be making a right turn to get out and a left turn to come in. I don't know that that they're gonna be doing a lot of crisscrossing because they're most likely gonna be heading out to
They're not going to go out through
Millen.
they're not going to snake their way
To
up.
the
through
north.
Correct.
yeah, they're probably not gonna be heading out to the north.
I just think it would take some of it off that street and more of it onto, and spread it out.
I understand the applicant's thoughts on not wanting to have the access off of a collector road. And then in addition to, Bill mentioned that the city generally doesn't prefer it either.
Off of McDermott.
No, so this is gonna be the bypass.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a bypass, so that's gonna be converted into a collector.
When
as
it
I
becomes a
understand.
collector.
Yeah.
So that's just another access point on a collector, which,
Yeah, and that's what the city prefers to stay away from, and the applicant's preferring to stay away from it, which I didn't hear a specific reason, but the assumption would just be for traffic flow and safety.
Madam Chair, I still don't see, if you had a south road that connected in with Daphne there, that future bypass loop, I still don't see that being the major access into the neighborhood. I would see the existing road that comes north right now from McMillan into the subdivision being the major road, and this would just be an additional access to make it a little less janky to turn left there and then turn left again immediately into a loop. That was my only reasoning for wanting to see the stub street there. And I don't see a problem with having 3 entrances into it, because I don't think that's going to be the section of the neighborhood that people are racing through.
So if it's a stub street, then when does it open up to give access? When the lot to
When
the south
Daphne goes
develops? When Daphne goes through? Okay. I understand what you're saying.
Because it's a proposed road at this point.
What's that?
That bypass road is a proposed road, Daphne.
Yes, right. Well, I would assume the southern portion of it will be implemented with that phase.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Holland?
I'm going to attempt to make a motion, see where it
Please
goes. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council file number H-2018-0119 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of January 17th, 2019, with the following modifications. That the applicant would not need to stub a street to the north. We would eliminate that requirement. That the stub street to the south would be required to connect into Daphne when that development comes in. That we would require more open space up to a minimum of 10%, and that the applicant would work with planning staff and also have kind of a comprehensive plan of all the amenities when it goes to City Council, and that they would add an additional amenity for this section. That we would eliminate the requirement of a micropath going all the way from the north through the south, but that as the applicant stated, they would enhance the middle of that development section to add a pathway and expanded green space, and adjust those lot sizes in the middle section. Is there anything else I'm missing?
did you touch on the amenities in the modified DA?
I mentioned that the applicant would work to put together a comprehensive list of all the amenities, and that council would review that to make sure we had appropriate number of amenities and variety. Any other adjustments I need to make to that?
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the application with stated modifications for Oakland subdivision H20180119. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries.
So, Madam Chair, just so I have one last word on the record.
Yes.
In my 9 years of stewardship, I appreciate all the help and stuff that I've learned. I hope I've been a good steward. I turn that stewardship over to you guys and the new commissioners. Don't screw it up.
Well, we will significantly miss your knowledge, especially your engineering background. I know
Yes.
there's been many times I've come to the meeting and thought, well, I may not totally get it, but Steve will. So we will definitely miss having you here.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, before we adjourn, I just wanted to extend an offer. Are any of you needing tickets for the State of the City address? And if so, if you would mind just sending me an email tomorrow, then we'll try to get you some tickets.
Say that again?
State of the City address.
Oh, okay.
Or the mayor's on February 6th. So wanted to offer that, extend that offer to you, and then we'll do our best to get you some tickets so that you can attend that event. So please email me and let me know what your desire is to attend that event.
It's more limited seating this year because of the change of location.
That is correct. And tickets are going quickly.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn the public hearing on January 17th, 2019. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.